To the black community, Diddy was like Trump and Epstein rolled into one. I told my neighbor, Diddy is black people's Epstein, except he's still alive. I'm a writer, and a few years ago, I wrote a piece about how 9/11 didn't really disturb me, but when Aaliyah died, it absolutely broke my heart. Now, before you say I hate America, I don't. It's just that I've never felt valuable as an American. So when 9/11 happened and there was a lot of anti American sentiment, I was like, I mean, nobody sees me as American on either side. So, it was a crisis, but it felt like one that had nothing to do with me, if that makes any sense. And now I'm having that feeling again, watching the development of this Epstein files and the Diddy case. Because I don't care about Epstein. I'm glad y'all stayed on it. I really am glad y'all stayed on it because this ironically might bring him down. But I do care about all these things that Diddy was doing because there are only four things that black people take seriously: Uno, shoes on the table, mac and cheese, and hip hop. I'm Asia Harriet Hales, and I'm a social thinker, meaning I talk about the issues that matter over here. And today we're talking about hip hop as black royalty. And before we get into it, don't be goofy, because obviously I do not speak for every black person on earth. There are going to be plenty of black people that disagree with my opinion. America has a different set of rules for rich and powerful people than for anybody else. And the unwritten rule for the rich and powerful is dead girls and live boys will get you in trouble. Everything else is fair. This is just how America functions, black and in hip hop. This translates to black people not actually officially canceling an artist until there is a dead girl or a live boy that surfaces. Don't get mad at me, I didn't make the rule. And personally, one of the things that I think makes the Diddy documentary so interesting is that Diddy is existing in this like public morality gray zone where there are live girls and there are live men. There are no little boys. There are no dead girls. But there are dead men. But also in hip hop, we don't care about. And I think what this particular case is doing for the black community is pushing us to reframe our celebrity ethics, which ultimately will be a good thing for all of the people that celebrities victimize. And another thing, if all they had was the women that he abused, there would be no documentary. Because as a nation and as a culture, we don't care about black women. We don't care about what happens to black women. I'm trying to figure out how to break this down that it won't take an hour, because the entire Diddy case is really a great case study of misogynoir and how misogynoir and homophobia intersect. And if you don't know what that means, don't worry, because I'm going to break it all down. Misogynoir is a term coined by Moya Bailey to describe the 2-for-1 oppression that black women experience both as women and as racial minorities. This is going to be very quick and dirty, but it's a very easy way to understand it. Basically, Stevie Wonder versus Helen Keller. If you're just blind or just deaf, you have a different lived experience than someone who is both blind and deaf. That's how misogynoir works. And in the United States, black women have been functioning as specialized violence receptacles for the past 400 years. I really want to break this down, but I can't do it in the next 30 seconds, so come on back for the next video, okay? There's this scholar, Dante King. He wrote the book Diagnosing Whiteness and Anti-Blackness, and he talks about how the violent abuse of black women's bodies was a fiscal imperative for the building of the United States. I took my 14-year-old niece to one of his seminars, and I was like, I didn't think this through. I did not think it. Anyway, in 1772, there was a case called the Somerset case, and it basically put the writing on the wall for the end of slavery in the British Empire. Now, of course, that didn't happen until 1807, and by then, the American colonies had already seceded. So contrary to popular opinion, us seceding was a preemptive strike to protect slavery. And that's on 1619 project. So for America to become the country it is now, it needed a backup system, and that backup system was black women's uterus. There were less than 400,000 Africans in the colony in 1780. And by 1865, there were 4 million. And everybody didn't make it to adulthood. So we bred 10 times as many enslaved people at bare minimum out of black women's bodies than we ever transported to the United States. If you factor in the mortality rate, it was probably more like 15 times. I get that this is heavy to hold. It was honestly heavy to research. So get yourself a cup of tea and come back for the next video. In the last video, we talked about how the devaluing of Black women's bodies is historic. Now we're going to talk about how it's cultural. I'm Asia Harriet Hales, and today we're putting the culture on trial. So in addition to Black women's punani being the most valuable and simultaneously the most undervalued resource of colonial United States, we also had to exist within a power structure that made us the place where violence lands. Violence is about power. We see this in context across the United States. If you haven't watched my series, A Mass Shooting is White Man's Cry for Help, go back and find that one because I break it down really and thoroughly. So when somebody feels powerless in their own body, the quick proxy for getting that power back is to perpetrate violence on someone else's body. And unfortunately, we live in a world where shit rolls downhill. So white men feeling powerless could take their violence out on whoever they want to. White women, black men, black women. White women couldn't take their violence out on white men, but they could use white men to create proxy violence for black men, and they could directly perpetrate violence on black women and black children, which they did. And if you want to know more, read this. Then you have black men who are themselves receiving a great deal of violence and also a high level of emasculination. So the only people they have left to take that violence out on are black women and children. Then you have black women, and the only people below the hierarchy on us are our own kids, which is why we beat the hell out of them. There's more, come back. Homophobia and misogynoir go hand in hand, because without misogynoir, you don't have any devaluing of black women's bodies. And without devaluing black women's bodies, you don't have a definition of masculinity as the opposite of femininity. And without masculinity construction as a polar opposite identity, you don't have homophobia, because homophobia depends on considering gay men less real. In the same way that transphobia depends on considering trans women less real. Sexuality is a spectrum. Very few people are actually fully gay or fully straight. That's really not even an accurate label. But masculinity requires heterosexuality to be normative, because without that, the entire concept of patriarchy falls apart. And that's why we're only having half the conversation about Diddy, because what I saw in that documentary were at least a dozen men who had been personally victimized by him, and one man who used the politics of shame to exploit everybody. He was abusing women and no one cared, because we don't care about black women's bodies. He was abusing men and the men refused to tell, because being a victim made you less of a man. And that's why we can say no Diddy without actually addressing homophobia, because the culture has not changed. And until it does, I'm Asia Harriet Hales, and I'll be watching. I think the reason we're so morally flexible about hip-hop artists is because we're morally flexible about men, and we have an extremely low bar of expectation for them in general. I'm Asia Harriet Hales. I'm a social thinker, and I talk about the things that really matter, and today, that's so like I said in the earlier videos, violence is about control. And so we expect a certain amount of violence from the rich and powerful, because we expect a certain amount of violence is what it takes to get to the top. But I think also because of America's inherent double standard, that when that violence is wearing a white face, it's suddenly noble, but when it's wearing a black face, it's criminal and barbaric. So as a culture, we tend to be like, hey, if white people with money can get away with it, why can't this black man with money get away with it? Whether we agree with what he's doing or not, because it's the principle of the matter. And I think underneath that is this desire to be insulated from consequences in the way that white people are. And I'm not just talking about celebrities, I'm talking about on a day-to-day basis. We don't expect the regular people to be insulated from risk, but we do expect it of our royalty, aka hip-hop artists, because we need to believe that there's some amount of money that will make us safe. So if they can take somebody as big as Diddy down, no amount of money will make anyone safe. And I know that's ironic to be saying about a man who literally preyed on people and made them unsafe. But I never said the culture had common sense. I still have more, so come on back.